Arthur is the director in business development here in PIDC. Many of you already know Arthur. He has been the face of PIDC, trying to identify your needs for financing in the marketplace. He is our point of contact for this next series of webinars talking about the Pennsylvania COVID-19 hospitality industry recovery program. And so with that, I am happy to introduce Arthur Jimenez. Arthur, take it away, please.
Marla, thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen. Oh, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. So here we're talking about the CHIRP program. Let me share my screen. Okay, and I'll put on. There we go. Yeah, so the CHIRP program is stands for the COVID-19 Hospitality Industry Recovery Program. And it's we call it CHIRP, the CHIRP program. And what's really important is there is about $17 million allocated to Philadelphia. The total allocation to Pennsylvania was $145 million, but because of Philadelphia's population, it's about $17 million will be reserved for us, which is great news. The grants are going to be in the range of about $5,000 to $50,000. The applications will be opening. They have not opened yet. We're still fine tuning the application itself, but it should be open by March 15th, which is Monday at 11 a.m. And then the applications will close on April 5th. So, and some things have changed here in this, in the sense that applications will not be reviewed during this time period. So there is about 2 to 3 weeks of folks that can have the time to apply. You should not wait. You should apply as soon as you can, but applications will only be reviewed after Monday, April 5th, to give enough time for all businesses, especially the smaller ones that are disadvantaged and might not be able to apply right away. You do have your time, but please just apply as soon as you can. And the link will be found on our website. It's pidcphila.com/CHIRP. There's a couple of questions already about eligibility. I won't go through all the words here, but the first one, it was in the Q&A. If you've received a grant from another program, like the one that was recently the restaurants and gym program, you are still eligible to apply. If you got a grant from the statewide program, you're still eligible to apply. The key is you just do not use the funds. If you are awarded for this grant program, you cannot use those funds for the same expenses you did last time. It can be for a different time period. Let's say if it's rent, you're behind on your rent and you paid, you used the last grant to pay for, let's say, January, and now you need help with February. You can use these funds for February, for the month of February. It just can't be for the same month or the same expense. Okay. But yeah, let's run down the eligibility of the program. Number one, you have to be in the Philadelphia County. So PIDC is administering the grant specifically for Philadelphia. If your business is located in a different county, that county should have its own administrating nonprofit or entity that's running this program. But for Philadelphia, it is PIDC. Number two is the NACI code. So you find this usually on the first page of your tax returns or your business tax returns. You should have either a 721 or accommodation subsector or a 722 food services and drink places subsector as your primary activity. Number three, you have a documented 25% reduction in gross receipts between 2019 and 2020. Number four, you're a for-profit business. You are not publicly traded. The next one is you have less than 300 employees. So this is really meant for smaller businesses. The SBA has a big definition of what small business is, but it's really meant to be those smaller ones under 300 employees as of February 15th. And your business must have a maximum tangible net worth not more than $15 million. Majority of the businesses that we interact with are under that threshold, but that we just need to make that clear. Um, and next bullet point, you have to be in compliance with local, state, and federal taxes. Either you're paid up to date, or you are on the approved payment plan. Or you're in the process of getting the payment plan. So I think you still apply, but by the time you receive the grant agreement, if you're awarded, you have to have a payment plan set up. Next is having a required federal, state, and local licenses, especially food licenses that expire, I believe, every year, every couple of years. You need to be up to date on that. Um, you have to be in good standing with the city of Philadelphia. And lastly is apply for one CHIRP grant per Philadelphia County business location. So if you have multiple locations, you can only use one CHIRP grant program. So the program priorities that you must demonstrate. So these are not required, but these, if you are facing, if these conditions do apply to your business, your application will be prioritized. Number one is demonstrate 50% or greater reduction in revenue as measured by gross receipts between the second quarter and the fourth quarter of 2019 as compared to the second quarter through the fourth quarter of 2020. They just really want to show that there was a decrease in business between these two periods. Prior to the grant program, you have not received a COVID-19 relief loan or grant from the city of Philadelphia, or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or the federal government. You were subject to mandated closure by the Commonwealth, proclamation of disaster emergency in March 2020, or any renewal of state and disaster emergency proclamations. Your business is owned by historically disadvantaged people and are located in an area with high poverty. In addition, the program will be consideration for the businesses that are owned by women, immigrants, and disabled persons or veterans, earns less than $3 million in annual revenues pre-COVID-19, and provides jobs in Philadelphia. Okay, so again, these are grants. These are funds that you do not have to repay, but you do have to supply a lot of documents to complete your application. And so this is some of the information you'll need to provide. Number one is in the application, it's going to ask you some questions about the type and structure of your business. So you should just review that and make sure you're crystal clear on what type of business. Is it a C corporation, S corporation, sole proprietorship? You should just double check on that. Make sure you know exactly what it is. You should know your EIN number, your social security number, or your individual tax identification number. This depends upon what type of structure you have. So if you're a sole proprietor, I believe you use your social security number. But if you are either a C Corp or an S Corp, you might have an EIN or an ITIN number. You should know what your NAICS code is. That is on the first page of your tax return. You should know what your annual and quarterly gross receipts from 2019, 2020. You have to actually enter those into the application. So there will be, your tax return probably only has your annual revenues. So you have to use your quarterly reports to understand what your receipts are, your gross receipts are. You should know how many full-time and part-time employees you've had pre-COVID, and then also how many you have full-time and part-time currently. Okay, so that's just the information part that you fill out on the application. You'll also be required to upload certain documents. That includes the 2019 tax return, your business tax return. If you're a sole proprietor, that includes your personal tax return. That's if you've been in operation since 2019. You also need to upload your 2019 profit and loss statements on your quarterly or monthly basis if you were in operation since 2019. If you were only in operations like at the beginning of 2020, obviously you wouldn't have those. So you should provide statements, I believe on a monthly basis for 2020. So you can really show that there was reduction in your receipts from January, February, and then after when the pandemic started in March onwards. For documents, again, you have to upload the 2020 profit and loss statements on a quarterly or monthly basis. I think quarterly should be fine if you did exist, if your business did have operations in 2019. But again, if you are only in business in 2020, you do need to show that your reports on a monthly basis. And then lastly is you get to fill out a W-9. The version should be October 2018. That's important. The form is different on October 2018. So just make sure on the top left side, you see that date there. It needs to be signed, dated, and completed. And that is for tax purpose. If you are awarded, we need that W-9 so we can send you the grant funds, and then we can. So we just make sure that we have all the information we need for the grant award. Again, the application will open on 11 a.m. on Monday, March 15th. Application will be accepted until 11:59 p.m. on April 5th. That is the link, pidcphilo.com/CHIRP. Again, the application will be reviewed after April 5th. So it's not a first come, first serve. We want to give equal chance to all, different types of businesses. Oh, excuse me. And application will be awarded based on eligibility and alignment with the program priorities, which I laid out earlier. And we've teamed up with several partners, CDC partners, that will help you fill out the application. We are actually also holding another webinar just for the CDCs, so that helps them to train them on how the application works, like what it asks for line by line. Some CDCs, if you do need language assistance, can help with that. So that's a tremendous resource you should use if you have one in your area, or if you worked one in the past. There will be a link on that website, the pidcphilo.com/CHIRP. There should be a link for community partners. So it'll have the area where they are focused on locally, and what languages, services can they provide? What languages can they translate the application in? It's only available in English, but they should be able to help you to translate into different languages. And they'll also help you with identifying the right documents if you are having trouble with that. And that's really it. Right now, the application is not ready to be presented. We're still fine tuning it to get it ready for March 15th. But I believe next week we will be able to present it, and it should be finalized by then, so we can kind of walk through it and just show you exactly what you need to fill out. Why don't we go to questions? Let's see. I'll start with the top. Roger asks, is there a definition entity-wide for purposes of number of employees? Is it net worth by location, or also entity-wide as well? That's actually a good question. I don't know. So do you have multiple? Maybe can we allow Roger to speak so we can clarify what he's asking for? Roger, I think you're unmuted.
Yes, I'm here. Do you have me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Thanks for taking my question. Yeah, we have multiple locations. I'm the COO of Chickies and Pete's.
Okay.
So in terms of the question about employees, if you look across the entire Chickies and Pete's company-wide system, we would be over the 300 full-time equivalents. If we looked at Philadelphia County locations, we would probably be close and potentially under it. So I was just wondering if it was the same type of common ownership as like the Affordable Care Act guidelines, in terms of, is that the definition of entity-wide?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't think I know the answer to that. Can I get back to you?
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, because we are early on and in the
Understood.
process.
We're all trying to learn through this together.
Okay, but that's yeah. So you're trying to understand. So for the Philadelphia program, does it include, I guess, all your locations or just the
Yes.
Philadelphia locations? Because that would change your eligibility.
Yeah, in terms of those qualifications to determine eligibility, and the net worth
Mm,
would be the same then.
okay, write that down.
Appreciate it.
And can I ask you to email me, Roger? So we can take this
Yes.
offline.
Yep, sure.
Let me give you my email address is, I'll share that with also everyone. You see that, Roger? A Jimenez at pidcphila.com.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, that's a great
Thank you very
question.
much.
So I just want to make sure I don't lose track of that.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, let's go. Next question from Mark Lists. We operate catering venues in several counties in and around Philly. Each venue is part of our corporation. It's not its own corporation. If we suffered a loss or filled out venues, can we supply P&L for those specific venues? Another good question. I think it said that you can apply for one CHIRP grant per Philadelphia County business location. So if you have multiple locations, I think you can apply for a grant for each one. So if each venue is part
Hey,
of our,
Art,
yep.
I was just gonna hop in that this needs to match up with your tax return element. So the gross receipt loss needs to match with your tax return. So I think it's a little bit of how your corporation is structured and how you've filed them on your tax return is where that would need to match.
Yeah, good point, Jess, because that's the only way we can verify it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Next question is I have a cigar lounge. This is from Constantinos. I have a cigar lounge that does not have a food permit, but definitely a hospitality industry since we aren't your traditional cigar store with 3,000 square feet. We were crushed last year since our entire business model is based upon people being inside without a mask. Could I qualify for that? Unfortunately, the eligibility really is dependent upon your NACI code. And I don't think there is a way to go past that. So it has to be starting with a 721 or a 722. That's really unfortunately the limitation of this grant program is those two subsectors are eligible. Okay. Next question is from Darren Pearson. Why can restaurants apply for this grant and have received the gym restaurant relief grant, but are ineligible to apply for this grant if they received the COVID-19 relief grant? I think.
If I could just clarify this one, Art, I think this is about the difference between the eligibility and the program priorities. So folks who have received any other funding are definitely eligible to apply, whether that's any other COVID relief grants. But if in terms of the program priorities, folks who have not, businesses that have not received any COVID relief funding at the local, state, or federal level are being given priority.
Okay, thank you for that, Jess.
Yeah, just in case that was causing confusion.
Okay, next question with Christine Procaccio. We have 3 locations in Philadelphia with separate tax IDs by the same owner. Does each location make less than $3 million? Well, again, what Jess said, I think it depends on how it's reported with tax returns. If each one has its own separate tax return and it is under 3 million in revenues, then yes. Yes, they are eligible to apply. But Jess, can you also clarify, because that's a priority, right? It earns less than 3 million annual revenues. If they make more, are they still eligible?
Correct. So the eligibility is just the employee count. So under 300 employees total, and a total net worth eligibility under 15 million. But the program is prioritizing those businesses that have annual revenues under 3 million.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, next question, Roxana. Some people do not have their NACE code in their taxes. Can this be done in that case? That's a good question. It's, I'm pretty sure it's on most of the tax returns. Is it maybe on the sole proprietor taxes? I might have to take that offline and check. Can I ask you, Roxana, to tell us what type of tax returns you have? Can we unmute her?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was speaking on behalf of some of our clients. It's mostly sole proprietors. We have noticed there's no NAICS code under, under Schedule C. So I was just wondering what can be done in that case if it's not encrypted on the taxes already.
That's a good question. Okay, I have to get back to you on that, I think, unless you have a answer, Jess.
I do not. I think that's a great question, and we'll have to look into it if there is not an ACES code. I do just want to mention that you cannot change what is submitted on your tax return. So if you have something on your tax return, my understanding is that cannot be changed. Also just wanted to clarify about what I said earlier in terms of eligibility and priorities around other grant funds that have been received. Just want to reiterate, as Art said earlier, that you cannot double dip in terms of using the funds from this program for something that you've already received funds for from another grant program.
And Roxana, please email me so I can get back to you after this webinar so we can clarify that. We can find out what the answer is.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Question from Christine. What if you make more than 3 million? So yeah, it sounds like you're still eligible as long as the other parameters still apply, that you're under 300 full-time employees and your net worth is still less than 15 million. It's just you won't be as prioritized as businesses are making under $3 million annual revenues. Okay. Next question. Oh, looks like one more question from Darren again. How do you determine how much of the grant funds a business can receive? The grant is from $5,000 to $50,000 in a large range. Jess, do you know that one?
Yeah, so it is a large range. I think we will be determining that in terms of the application process once the application process gets up and moving and reviewed in terms of the numbers of applicants and the applicants in the priority areas. So okay. I don't have an exact answer on that one. And yes, it is a large range.
Okay. Yeah, because it sounds like from the statewide program, it was very clear cut. If you, it was more revenue based. If you made what, less than $1 million, you basically apply for, receive $50,000. Or if you make the minimum amount, I think it was like 10,000, or was it 20,000? You
Yeah,
made,
so the legislation allows for variation
Mhm.
within $5,000 increments. So it will likely be correlated in some capacity to revenue size. However, it's not an exact one-to-one. If you have this in revenue, you're
Right,
getting.
it's different this time. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Our NACI code is wrong on our tax return. Is that an issue? It's clear that we are a drinking place. Yeah, it sounds like that's gonna be a difficult one because it cannot be changed. As what Perjess said earlier. I might have to get back to you on that and see if there is a way to correct that. Again, I think I posted my email address on the chat, so if you please can email me offline so we can follow up with you afterwards and see if we can figure out a resolution for your question. Okay. Any other questions?
Art, do you want to just look quickly? There's a few, I think, in the chat. I'm not sure if we covered everything.
Let me see. Oh. Okay, I'm going through. Yeah, we have the cigar. We covered the cigar lounge. Oh, hold on. What are some of the City of Philadelphia links to get print out your document of your business is in compliance? What is the email and website to business to get their commercial activity license? That's a good
I would
question.
just note on this one that that is not a required document. The only documents that you will need to upload as part of the application are the tax returns, profit and loss statements, and the W-9s. You will not need to upload those information, but you will need to certify that you are in compliance.
Yes, and you can check this for yourself if you just want to be proactive about it. So it's called the Philadelphia Eclipse. So ECLIPSE. I can post the link, so you can actually look this up yourself and just make sure your business license is active. Eclipse. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, a good way to be proactive. It is available online. We did this with the restaurant gym program just to make sure if licenses were active, but you should be able to access this yourself because it will come up if you are if you get further along in the grant approval process. Okay, hold on. Lost my. Okay, we talked about the cigar lounge. Yeah, some clients do not have an AC code, so we'll go back to you on that. Yeah, Marlo did post a link about the Philadelphia activity license link. Says business activity code number on my 2019 was, yeah. So if it's 721 or 722, the NACI code, but looks like it might be called the business activity code on some returns. You're eligible to apply. Yes, to
And I think there's one question in here about how long would it take before the grant funding would be deposited into a business banking account, which I can let folks know, as Art mentioned earlier, that the April 5th deadline, no decisions would be made until after that deadline. We're currently estimating about a 4-week period before the approvals or any award notifications would be done. And then following that would be when grants could be dispersed. It would be based on completing a grant agreement if you were awarded before any dollars would be dispersed.
Okay, thanks for that, Jess. There's another question about if my business was just about to get a contract from University of Pennsylvania, and then it was hit, the pandemic hit. Can I still apply to use the funds for payroll and inventory? Yeah, I mean, you can show if there was a dip in revenue from 2019 to 2020, there was at least a 25% decrease. You should be eligible to apply. And for the uses of the funds, it's actually a good question. I think you can, as long as you make the case that you could have purchased inventory if it wasn't for the pandemic. I think that would be eligible use of the grant proceeds for basically to show that you were you suffered losses, therefore you could not make payroll or make inventory. I think that's fair. That was the case for other grant programs. Again, it really just the only thing you can't use it for is just really using double dipping. So using those funds to pay for expenses that already were reimbursed from other grants. Okay, there's a question about the timing for the grants, right before deposited. How can you apply to the letter, the Philadelphia stating that you are in compliance? Again, you don't have to worry. I mean, that's more later down the road on the application. They will check on that. But if you want to be proactive, you can use the Eclipse website to check the status of your licenses. As for taxes, that's actually a good point too. There is the, I'll try and post it. There is a link where you can check the status of your taxes. Because sometimes even though you're paying on time, there might be a glitch in Department of Revenue that shows that you are delinquent, but you probably are not, but that's what they're going to go by. So you should you should double check that as well if you want to be proactive. Did we get to the question by Tom Peters?
I don't think so. And that was actually in both the Q&A and the chat. So we can take that one on.
Okay, let's go back to the Q&A. My 2020 sales are 1.4 million, but our 2019 sales were around 3.4 million. So which figure will PIDC use to determine a priority consideration? That's a good question.
So the priority element in terms of the size, there's two elements to that. There's one that is, the program also prioritizes a 50% or greater reduction in revenue, and that is measured by gross receipts between Q2 and Q4 of 2019 compared to 2020, calculated annually or quarterly. And then in terms of the overall revenue size, that is looking at pre-COVID-19 revenue, so less than $3 million prior to the February 15th, 2020 date is sort of what we're considering the pre-COVID timeframe.
Okay, next question. If you have an EIN or for each location, but file a consolidated tax returns, are locations eligible separately? Yeah, we usually go by what's on the tax return. Yeah, so I think that's what the limitation is. So if it's all consolidated, we have to look at one by one. I don't know if we have the ability to look at reports on a location basis. Do you know if we've determined that, Jess?
I don't believe so. I believe that it is all being run through the tax return in terms of the calculations being done. So that would need to match the consolidated tax return. But that's a great question, and I will flag that one as one that we can make sure to get a specific answer on as well. And I think bopping back to the chat function, there's a couple more questions there in terms of how much grant funding is allocated to Philadelphia County. It's approximately $17 million based on the allocation calculation from the 145 million statewide. And
Jess and Arthur, I just wanted to ask you to repeat the program parameters versus the priority parameters.
Okay.
Art, do you want to throw those slides back up just
Sure.
for visual reference?
Okay. Yeah, so that's a point, Marla. I think eligibility is different than priority. Eligibility means can you even apply for this grant program or not? So you have, again, let's go over it one more time. You have to be physically located in the Philadelphia County in operations as of February 15, 2020, and intended to continue operations within 1 year of the date of the application. Number two is the NACI code designation is within the accommodation subsector or starting with 721, or the food services and drinking places subsector 722 as your primary activity. Next one is document at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between 2019 and 2020, calculated annually or quarterly due to COVID, to the financial impact of COVID-19. Next is a for-profit business. You must be a for-profit business and not publicly traded entity. Next is you have to have fewer than 300 full-time employees, entity-wide as of February 15, 2020. Next is you have a maximum tangible net worth of no more than $15 million as of February 15, 2020. Next is you're in compliance with all local, state, and federal taxes and can be on an approved payment plan or in the process of getting a payment plan. Next is having required federal, state, and local licenses and permits to legally operate and be in good standing within the city of Philadelphia. And lastly is apply for one CHIRP grant per Philadelphia County business location. So you have a unique EIN for each location you apply for a grant for. Okay, so that's eligibility. Now for program priorities, so if you demonstrate 50% or greater reduction in revenue as measured by the gross receipts between second quarter and through the fourth quarter of 2019 and second quarter and fourth quarter 2020, so calculated annually or quarterly due to financial impact of COVID-19. So again, so that's 50% greater reduction in revenue, you will be prioritized. Next is prior to the grant program, you have not received a COVID-19 relief loan or grant from the city of Philadelphia, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or the federal government. Again, so that if you did, you're still eligible, but if you did not receive it, you will be your application will be prioritized. Next, we're subject to mandated closures by the Commonwealth of Proclamation of Disaster Emergency in March 2020, and any renewal or state of disaster emergency proclamations. Another priority will be for businesses that are owned by historically disadvantaged people. And then next is located in the area with high poverty. And then in addition, the program will be giving consideration to businesses that are owned by women, immigrants, disabled persons, or veterans, earns less than $3 million in annual revenue pre-COVID-19. And then next, the last one is providing jobs in Philadelphia.
And I would just note, because I think there was a couple questions in here around some of these. One was, to what extent do the eligibility requirements differ from county to county? And I would say that they can vary greatly. The eligibility, or some or most or all of the eligibility requirements are part of the statewide legislation. So the things that you see in here in terms of eligible businesses have come sort of directly from the statewide legislation. And I don't think that there is a lot of variability there in terms of the program priorities and how counties are prioritizing things within that. That's where you would see some of the variation. And then I think also someone had asked about a PPP loan. And so as Art was just outlining there, a PPP loan, if you received a PPP loan, whether it has been forgiven or not, that would be eligible to apply, but again, would fall under that. If you had not received a PPP loan, those would be prioritized, but you are still eligible to apply.
The next question is from Christine again. What happens if you are fiscal year? I guess, yeah, if your fiscal year does not match your calendar year, is that you're asking? So you have a 2019 tax return, but not a 2020 yet. That's a good question. I think we might go back to the asking for the annual just financial statements then.
That's correct. Yes, right. If a business does not have a 2020 tax return, they could do the financial statements, or the 2019 return can be used. Mm-hmm. And I know, I think Lamont had a question about independent contractors.
Yeah, let me see. Well, there's a question first about will there be grant funding for low-income community businesses, especially in the business corridor? The business corridors are in trouble right now. Can you help these business corridors recover? Yes, so it's not by zip code, but if the commercial corridor is in a low-income area, and if the business is owned by a person of color, and it's a historically disadvantaged person, yes, they will be prioritized. And the next question is, to what extent, if all the eligibility requirements are different? Oh, I think we answered that already. They do differ county by county. Independent contractors, can they apply who have bank statements or tax returns for 2019 or 2020? That's a good question. So I think individuals, can they apply, Jess, as independent contractors?
Definitely a sole proprietor can apply, but independent contractors, I think you would need to, that's actually what I'm going to have to look up, because I am not certain.
Okay. So whoever, Lamont, if you can, please email me so we can follow up with you. So we can get your email address. We get back to you on that. Again, my email is ajimenez@pidcphila.com. Yeah, a lot of great questions. So yeah, we'll do our best. Jess and I will go back to our team and see if we get these answered. So please email me so we can get back to you via your email address. Okay. I mean, time check right now is 1:45 p.m. Do we have any other questions?
It looks like we just got one more question in the chat. in terms of the 25% reduction in gross receipts. Will that be calculated quarterly or annually? Give me 1 second. So I believe that documented can be calculated quarterly or annually. But I want to just confirm because I know there is some specific language about that calculation. So if a business operated during all 4 calendar quarters of 2019, the revenue losses must be demonstrated in 1 quarter compared to the same corresponding quarter of 2020. Or annually if the tax return, if you're including the full tax return in the submission. So a business that started operations between January 1, 2020 and February 15th, 2020 can compare Q1 2020 to any other quarter in 2020. But if you have all 4 calendar quarters, you have to go from 1 quarter to the same corresponding quarter in 2020 or on an annual basis for the full tax return year.
So it sounds like if either one of them show at least 25% reduction, you should qualify, either monthly or annually.
Yeah, either one will allow you to qualify.
Okay, great. These are all great questions. So please ask more. This is the time now to do it. Yeah, and again, if we did not answer your question, we ask you to follow up, please email me and so we can get back to you.
And again, when will the application period open?
March 15th at 11 a.m. Okay, so the link will be available on that website, PIDCphila.com/CHIRP, CHIRP. Okay, let me put that one more time on the screen.
And between today and then, so many of the questions that have come up today, we will have answers for, so you can adequately complete your application. We will also host this same webinar on next Wednesday, but at 10 a.m. in the morning. So if you continue to have those questions, we want to make sure that we're giving you access to where you can get the answers to your questions so you can get your application in as soon as possible. Jessica and Arthur, how long do you expect the application period will remain open? How active do you think this program will be?
That's a good question.
I mean, I would anticipate it to be very active, but just to reiterate, this is not a first come, at least in Philadelphia County, this is not a first come, first serve application. So nobody's getting reviewed until after the April 5th deadline. While it is not completely finalized at the moment, the application process, we've been doing a bunch of work to try to keep the application fairly simple and straightforward. And so if you have all of your documents in order and prepared, it shouldn't take you more than like 15, 20 minutes to complete the application.
And I think it's important what you just said, that people don't overlook the fact that there are general rules established by the Commonwealth, but then each county, talk about that, Jessica, please.
Sure. So this is a program that was determined statewide and was developed by legislation at the state level. But the way that the program is being run is that each county has been given an allocation, and then within the specific legislation, enacting legislation for this program, there are a set of statewide requirements that were developed, and then each county with their own allocation of dollars is able to develop exactly how they determine to distribute the funds. So if there are businesses here that are functioning county to county, I encourage you to look at the various county organizations that are your county economic development organizations or your county CFI that are distributing these funds. And so they are each developing their own program priorities and elements of how they are running this program. I will say the March 15th application opening date is part of the enacting legislation. So every county is required to open it by the 15th as a end date. Some counties are looking at opening the program sooner. And I believe a county or two may have opened it actually on the 1st of March. So do look at the other counties if that is something that is available to you. But by March 15th, all Pennsylvania counties should be open. And I think there was one other question in the Q&A about will the application be available for review before 3/15? And I don't believe that we will have that publicly available for review, but just to reiterate that the application, again, is fairly simple. It should not take more than 15 to 20 minutes. If you want to do something in advance, I would say preparing those documents, making sure you have your tax returns, your profit and loss statements, your W-9, and making sure you have that corrected version from October 2018 are the things that you can pull together. And as Art has put up here, that basic information that you will need in terms of making sure you have your identification numbers, your NACIS codes, your annual and quarterly statements, and your full-time equivalent employees. Those are the things that you can pull together in advance.
Great. Jessica and Arthur, thank you so much. Do we have other questions? We are at 1:54. We do want to honor the time. We thank you for taking the time again on next Monday, the 15th. Please make sure you're going to our website and you will see the application. It will be live. If you have other questions, feel free to bring your questions on Wednesday at 10 a.m. One thing we do encourage you, and we cannot say this too often, is to make sure you are carefully going over your application to avoid any mistakes. You don't want your application to be rejected because of an error. So please make sure you're looking at all of the required documents, making sure all of the information in your documents is as is required. So just be careful.
Yep. In previous grant applications, once you click submit, that's it. You can't really go back and update something. You made an error. So you got to really double, triple check things. Unfortunately, the system will not allow you to make updates after you click submit. Again, there's no real rush, right? I mean, we want to make it fill out as soon as you can, but you will be given basically 3 weeks to fill it out starting March 15th. So take your time, make sure it's accurate, but start early.
And also a lot of times what is upsetting to business owners, everyone is in need of these recovery dollars right now. But as you see in Philadelphia, it is not first come, first serve. So it is feasible that you may submit an application, meet all of the requirements, and still not get approved because number one, there's a limited amount of funds. There is always in this pandemic greater need than there is available funds to fill all of the needs. So we expect to get more applications than there are funds that are available. So inevitably, companies that are eligible may not get awarded the grant, number one. Number two, because in Philadelphia County, we do have these priorities, you could theoretically meet the eligibility and still not get the grant if there are so many, an overwhelming number of companies that meet the priorities. And so please, please keep that in mind. And again, we know that there are most businesses that are in need of all of these funds, whether it's the federal dollars, the state dollars, the local dollars. And the regret for us all is that there's just not enough funds to cover all of the losses that people have, these businesses have experienced. But please make sure you are filling out your application to the best of your ability. Sometimes you will be awarded the grants, sometimes you won't be awarded the grants. We are here to answer all of your questions. Any questions that we could not answer on today, we will try our best to get those responses to you before the end of this week. And certainly by next week, we will have those questions answered and we will be ready for a lot more. What we often see is by the time the application portal is open and live, there may be a few glitches in the system. So we'll get those questions and we will resolve those issues. But just be careful in the completion of the application. You do have Arthur's email address, so make sure you are sending him email addresses with your questions that were not answered today, and he will make sure to get those responses to you. Are there other, we're 1:58, we've got 2 minutes. We want to make sure we honor the time. Other questions? If not, we do want to remind you that on Tuesday of next week, we are hosting our last in the 6-month series of our mental health series called Is It Just Me? And I will tell you, if you are a business owner and you have been tracking all of the programs that are available, you will know this can put some stress on you. And so we are addressing that issue over this last 6 months in partnership with the Scattergood Foundation and Spectrum Health Services. So next Tuesday, we will be hosting Dr. Robin Smith, renowned psychologist right here in Philadelphia, and she will lead us through finding joy during difficult times. And that is at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So please come, invite your employees to come, invite your network of entrepreneurs to come. If there are family members who need to find joy during difficult times, please invite them to come. All of this information is available on PIDC's website. Today's webinar can be found on PIDC's blog, so you can replay. If there are any questions that you missed, any answers that you missed, you may be able to find those on the blog. Again, once you're on the PIDC website, make sure you are signed up for our newsletter so you can receive all of the information for what's happening in and around PIDC. So with that, Jessica, my colleague Jessica, my colleague Arthur, my colleague Jasmine, my colleague Stanley, thank you all for participating today, and thank all of our business owners in the community. If there are any other questions that you have, please feel free to send us an email. If there are other topics where you need information, send those to us and we will get responses out to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much. It's 2 o'clock. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.